My name is Serenity, and I'm 22 years old from Boston. 6 years ago, my entire world shattered when my parents told me I needed to move out. Not because I did anything wrong, but because my golden child sister Amber was pregnant at 18, and they needed my room for the baby nursery. I was just 16, still in high school with nowhere to go. The look in their eyes told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in our family. If you've ever felt replaced or cast aside by the people who should love you most, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe. This is how I rebuilt my life from scratch. Growing up in our middle-class suburban home outside Boston, I always sensed something was different about how my parents treated me versus my older sister Amber. Our family looked perfect from the outside. My dad Michael worked as an accountant at a respected firm downtown, while my mom Diana taught third grade at the local elementary school. They were well liked in the community, active in the PTA, and hosted summer barbecues where everyone wanted an invitation. But inside our home, the dynamics were clear. Amber was the sun, and I was just a distant planet orbiting around her. 2 years older than me, she had beautiful natural blonde hair that matched my mother's, while I had inherited my father's darker coloring. From earliest childhood, the favoritism was subtle but consistent. When Amber turned 8, she had a massive birthday party at the local recreation center with a bouncy castle professional face painter and custom cake from an expensive bakery. 30 kids attended, and my parents spent weeks planning every detail. When my 8th birthday came around, we had cupcakes in the backyard with 5 friends. My mom explained they were just being practical, since my birthday fell during a busy time at work for both of them. It wasn't just birthdays. Amber always got new clothes at the start of the school year, while I received her hand-me-downs, even though they were often still in good condition. She got the newest model of phone when she turned 13, while I waited until 15 and received a basic model. When Amber made the soccer team, my dad never missed a game. When I joined the photography club and had exhibitions, they made it to maybe 1 in 4. I learned early on that the path to any parental attention was through achievement and self-sufficiency. I became a straight-A student, never asked for help with homework, and made sure I caused absolutely no trouble. I kept my room spotless, helped with dinner without being asked, and basically tried to be the perfect low-maintenance child. Sometimes it worked. My dad would ruffle my hair and say, "That's my responsible girl." But those moments were brief acknowledgments, not the sustained pride and interest they showed in everything Amber did. My grandmother Martha, my mom's mother, was the only one who seemed to notice. During Sunday dinners at her house, I'd help her in the kitchen, while Amber and my parents watched football in the living room. "You know, you remind me so much of myself at your age," she told me once while we washed dishes. "Always trying so hard to be seen." When I was 12, she gave me my first camera. Not a toy or a disposable one, but a real digital camera that was several models old but still took beautiful photos. "You notice things others don't," she said. "I think you should capture what you see." Photography became my escape and my voice. I started by taking nature photos, but gradually began documenting our family gatherings from my perspective. Looking back at those photos now is fascinating. So many shots where my parents are leaning toward Amber, their body language open and engaged, while there's a subtle but visible distance in how they position themselves near me. At school functions, my parents would chat enthusiastically with Amber's teachers, but give cursory nods to mine despite my excellent reports. In family vacation photos, Amber was always centered, often with an arm from each parent around her, while I was positioned slightly apart. These weren't conscious arrangements, which made them all the more revealing. By 14, I had developed a protective shell of independence. I rarely asked my parents for anything, knowing the answer would likely be, "We'll see," which usually meant no, or maybe next time, which meant never. Meanwhile, I watched as Amber received driving lessons, a generous allowance, and constant praise for even mediocre accomplishments. Our neighborhood friends and extended family either didn't notice or pretended not to. Our family had a reputation as the Hendersons, that nice family with the 2 daughters. People would sometimes comment that Amber was the outgoing one, and I was the quiet one, as if that explained everything. No one seemed to realize that I had learned being quiet was the only acceptable way to exist in our house. Despite everything, I didn't hate my sister. Amber wasn't malicious in her enjoyment of her favored status. She simply accepted it as the natural order of things. Sometimes she would even defend me in small ways, like suggesting we watch a movie I wanted to see, or asking me about my photography projects. But these moments of connection were always within the established hierarchy of our family, where her preferences ultimately mattered more than mine. My grandmother was my lifeline. She lived about 30 minutes away in a small but comfortable house where I would often spend weekends. There, I could breathe. She displayed my photographs, proudly asked thoughtful questions about my interests, and treated me like I mattered. When I confided in her about how I felt invisible at home, she never dismissed my feelings or made excuses for my parents. Instead, she taught me about resilience. Some people don't know how to see the treasure right in front of them, she would say. That doesn't make the treasure any less valuable. By the time I turned 14, the contrast between how my parents treated me and Amber became even more pronounced as we entered our teenage years. I remained focused on school, maintaining a perfect GPA, and joining the school newspaper as a photographer. My photos were regularly featured, and I was building a portfolio for college applications, even though that was still years away. Meanwhile, Amber's high school experience took a different turn. She had always been popular, but at 16 she started running with a wilder crowd. Her grades slipped from B's to C's and sometimes D's. She began coming home past curfew, sometimes smelling like beer or cigarettes. I would lie awake in my bedroom, listening to the whispered arguments when she stumbled in late, followed inevitably by my parents' sighs and excuses. "She's just finding herself," my mother would say the next morning. "All teenagers go through rebellious phases." My father would agree, reaching for more coffee. Yet when I asked permission to attend a photography workshop that would keep me out until 9 on a school night, the answer was an immediate no. "You need to focus on your studies, Serenity," my mother said firmly. "Photography is a nice hobby, but it's not going to get you into college." The double standard was baffling. When Amber failed her chemistry midterm, my parents hired a tutor. When I expressed interest in advanced photography classes, I was told to find free resources online. When Amber was caught skipping school to go to the mall, she was grounded for a weekend. When I forgot to take out the trash one night, I lost my weekend photography privileges for 2 weeks. At 15, I started working part-time at Riverside Cafe, a small coffee shop near our house. The owner, Mrs. Jenkins, was a kind woman who had known our family for years. She allowed me to work limited hours that wouldn't interfere with school, and I carefully saved almost every dollar I earned. While I told my parents the job was to build my resume and have spending money privately, I was already planning for college and an escape from our household. "You're wise beyond your years," Mrs. Jenkins told me once as I meticulously counted my tips. "Most kids your age would be spending that on movies and clothes." "I'm saving for something important," I replied, not wanting to share too much. "Good for you, honey," she said with an approving nod. My best friend Jasmine was my other lifeline during this time. Unlike my family, her parents treated their 3 children equally with individual attention to their unique needs and interests. The first time I had dinner at their house, I was shocked when Jasmine's father asked each child specific questions about their day and listened attentively to the answers. When her mother noticed me taking photos of their garden, she asked thoughtful questions about my photography and actually seemed interested in my responses. "Your photos are really good," Jasmine's father said, looking through some images on my camera. "You have a unique perspective." I nearly cried from the simple acknowledgement. At Jasmine's house, I caught glimpses of what family could be, which made returning home both harder and easier. Harder because the contrast was painful, easier because it confirmed I wasn't crazy or demanding too much. In my sophomore year, I entered the Regional Young Photographers competition on Ms. Thompson's recommendation. She was my school counselor and one of the few adults who recognized something in me worth nurturing. When I was selected as a finalist, I received an invitation to the awards ceremony. It was scheduled on a Saturday afternoon, and I tentatively asked my parents if they would attend. "What time is it again?" my mother asked distractedly. "The ceremony starts at 2, but they ask everyone to arrive by 1:30. I explained, trying to contain my excitement. Being a finalist in this competition was a big deal, something that could help with college applications. "Oh, honey, I'm sorry, but that's when Amber's soccer team has their championship game," my mother said with genuine regret. "We promised we'd be there." "Your sister really needs our support for this game," my father added. "She's been working so hard." The fact that Amber had only joined the soccer team a month earlier, as a way to boost her college applications after her declining grades, while I had been developing my photography skills for years, went unmentioned. I attended the ceremony alone, except for Jasmine, who came to support me. When I won second place and a $500 prize, there was no one from my family there to witness it. That night at dinner, my parents gave perfunctory congratulations before turning the conversation to Amber's game, which her team had lost despite their support. I began working on a private photography project during this period, capturing images that represented my place in the family. Photos of empty chairs at the dinner table when I had to work late shifts, shadows cast by my figure while bright light illuminated others in the frame. My bedroom sparsely decorated compared to Amber's room, full of trophies, photos with friends, and trinkets from family trips. It was therapy through art, helping me process my feelings without having to put them into words. Ms. Thompson became an important mentor during this time. After noticing that I spent lunch periods alone in the school library researching colleges, she invited me to eat lunch in her office occasionally. "You're thinking pretty far ahead," she observed one day, noticing the college brochures spread across her desk. "I need to be prepared," I replied simply. She studied me for a moment. "Serenity, I've been a counselor for 20 years. I can spot a student who's carrying more than they should be. Want to talk about what's going on at home?" Something about her genuine concern cracked my carefully maintained composure. Over several lunch periods, I shared pieces of my family dynamic, never complaining outright, but providing enough details for her to understand. Instead of offering platitudes or dismissing my feelings, she listened and validated them. "What you're describing is a family system with clear favoritism," she said eventually. "It's not your fault, and it's not something you deserve." She helped me channel my feelings into concrete plans for the future. We researched scholarship opportunities, discussed college programs that would match my interests and talents, and she even connected me with former students who had pursued photography professionally. For the first time, my dream of escaping through education felt tangible, rather than just wishful thinking. By 16, I had mapped out my path: maintain perfect grades, continue building my photography portfolio work, and save money, then apply to colleges, preferably with full scholarships, and as far from Boston as possible. I had no idea that my parents were about to accelerate my timeline in the most painful way possible. The evening that changed everything started like any other family dinner. It was early November of my junior year, crisp autumn air seeping through our not quite airtight windows. My mother had made lasagna, my father was discussing a difficult client at work, and Amber was uncharacteristically quiet, pushing food around her plate instead of eating. "Is everything okay, sweetheart?" my mother asked Amber, immediately noticing her unusual behavior. "You've hardly touched your food." Amber took a deep breath, glanced at her phone as if checking something, then looked up. "I have something to tell you all." My parents put down their forks, giving her their full attention. I continued eating, used to family announcements, rarely concerning me directly. "I'm pregnant," Amber said, her voice a mixture of apprehension and defiance. "Tyler and I are having a baby. I'm about 10 weeks along." The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face drained of color. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. I froze with my fork midway to my lips, processing what this might mean. "Are you sure?" my mother finally whispered. Amber nodded, pulling out her phone and sliding it across the table. "I had it confirmed at the clinic last week. That's the ultrasound picture." My parents leaned over the phone together, staring at the grainy image. I couldn't see their expressions, but I saw the subtle shift in their shoulders, the way tension seemed to flow out of them, as they looked at the first image of their grandchild. "Tyler knows," my father asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Yes, he was with me at the appointment. He wants to be involved," Amber replied. Tyler had been Amber's boyfriend for about 8 months. He was 19, worked at his father's construction company, and seemed decent enough the few times I'd met him. My parents had initially been wary of him because he hadn't gone to college, but they'd warmed to him over time. "What about college?" my mother asked, the practical question finally emerging. "I can take classes online for a while, or maybe take a gap year," Amber said, clearly having thought this through. "Tyler makes good money, and his parents said they'll help." I sat silently watching as my parents' initial shock transformed before my eyes into something like acceptance, and then incredibly excitement. "We're going to be grandparents," my mother said softly to my father, reaching for his hand. He squeezed it, a small smile forming. "A baby. Our first grandchild." Just like that, Amber's teenage pregnancy, which should have been a disappointment to our conventional appearance-conscious parents, was becoming a celebration. I excused myself from the table, claiming homework, but no one really noticed as they began asking Amber questions about due dates and doctor appointments. Over the next week, our house transformed. My mother started researching baby products online. My father had long conversations with Tyler about health insurance and saving plans. Amber received endless attention. with everyone treating her as if her pregnancy was an achievement rather than an accident that would drastically alter her already shaky future plans. No one talked about the practical realities where the baby would sleep, how Amber would continue her education, who would care for the child when she was in school or if she got a job. It was as if acknowledging these questions would break the spell of excitement that had overtaken our household. Then came the whispered conversations. I would enter a room to find my parents huddled together speaking in low tones that immediately ceased when they noticed me. Twice I overheard fragments "space issue" and "the other bedroom," which made little sense to me at the time. A week and a half after Amber's announcement, my parents called a family meeting in the living room. I arrived to find them sitting together on the couch with Amber in the armchair beside them. The only seat left for me was the hard wooden chair brought in from the dining room, positioned slightly apart from their cozy arrangement. "Serenity," my father began using his reasonable business voice. "We've been discussing the future arrangements with the baby coming, and we've had to make some difficult decisions." My mother nodded supportively beside him. "The house just isn't big enough for everyone plus a baby. We need to convert one of the bedrooms into a nursery." I looked between them confused. "Are you thinking of renovating the garage or something?" They exchanged glances, and I saw Amber study her fingernails intently. "No, sweetheart," my mother said, her voice gentle but firm. "We need your room for the nursery. It's right next to Amber's room, which makes the most sense for nighttime feedings and monitoring the baby." My mind struggled to process her words. "So, where will I sleep?" My father cleared his throat. "That's the difficult part. We think it would be best if you found another living arrangement." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You want me to move out? I'm 16. "We know it's not ideal," my mother said, leaning forward. "But Amber needs our support right now. She's in a delicate condition and needs to be close to her baby." "We've thought about this carefully," my father added. "You've always been so mature and independent. You have your job at the cafe and you're doing so well in school. We believe you can handle this transition." I looked at Amber, hoping for some support, but she avoided my eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "The baby needs to be near me, Serenity. I can't be running up and down the hallway all night. It just makes sense for the nursery to be your room." "But where am I supposed to go?" I asked, my voice rising, despite my efforts to remain calm. "I'm still in high school. I'm not even legally an adult." "We thought perhaps your friend Jasmine's family might take you in temporarily," my mother suggested. "They have that large house and you spend so much time there anyway." "Or maybe Grandma Martha could help," my father offered. "We know this is a big ask, but families have to make sacrifices sometimes." "And this is my sacrifice, giving up my home." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Try to understand," my mother pleaded. "This baby is coming whether we're ready or not. Amber needs a safe, stable environment. You're almost grown up, nearly ready for college anyway." I looked around at their faces, searching for any sign that this was a terrible joke. But all I saw was expectation. They had already decided. In the equation of our family, I was the variable that could be removed without disrupting the core. "How long do I have?" I asked, my voice hollow. "We'd need to start converting the room in 2 weeks," my father replied, having the decency to look somewhat uncomfortable. "The holidays are coming up, and we want to have everything ready well before the baby arrives." 2 weeks, 14 days to find a new home, pack up my childhood, and accept that in my parents' eyes I was disposable. "I see," I said, standing up on legs that felt numb. "I'd like to go to my room now, or should I say the nursery?" I walked upstairs in a daze, closed my door, and for the first time in years allowed myself to cry without restraint. Through my tears, one thought crystallized with perfect clarity. I had always known I wasn't their priority, but I never imagined I meant so little that they could actually cast me out. The next 14 days were a blur of panic, heartbreak, and frantic planning. While trying to maintain my grades and work shifts, I also had to find somewhere to live. The suggestion that I could simply move in with Jasmine's family showed how little my parents had thought this through. Jasmine lived in a 4-bedroom house, but with 3 siblings and 2 parents, they had no extra space. When I awkwardly brought up my situation to her, Jasmine was horrified and immediately asked her parents if I could stay with them temporarily. "You can sleep in my room," she offered. "We can put a mattress on the floor." Her parents were equally shocked when they heard what mine had decided. Mr. Patel pulled me aside after dinner at their house. "Serenity, you are welcome here for as long as you need, but I think we should speak with your parents," he said kindly. "This doesn't seem right." "Please don't," I begged. "It would only make things worse." I called my grandmother Martha the same day I learned I was being kicked out. Unlike Jasmine's parents, she didn't suggest talking to my parents. Instead, she was furious. "They're doing what?" she exclaimed over the phone. "Have they completely lost their minds?" Martha lived in a senior living community that didn't allow permanent residents under 55, but she immediately offered to break the rules. "You can stay with me, sweetheart. We'll just be discreet about it." I was touched by her offer, but knew it wasn't a viable long-term solution. The retirement community had strict policies, and Martha could lose her housing if they discovered she had a teenage resident living with her. "I appreciate it, Grandma, but I can't let you risk your home for me," I told her. "I'll figure something out." While I searched for options, my parents carried on as if nothing extraordinary was happening. My mother began bringing home paint samples for the nursery, holding them up to my bedroom walls while I was trying to study. My father took measurements for a crib and changing table. Amber occasionally gave me apologetic looks, but never actually intervened. One evening, I overheard her talking to my mother in the kitchen. "Maybe we could convert part of the basement instead." "It seems wrong to make Serenity leave," Amber said quietly. "The basement is too damp for a baby," my mother replied firmly. "Besides, Serenity is almost grown. She'll be off to college in a couple of years anyway. This is just speeding up the natural process." There was nothing natural about being forced out of your home at 16, but I had stopped expecting my parents to see that. Instead, I focused on practical matters. I needed to decide what possessions were essential and what I could leave behind or store somewhere. I went through my belongings methodically, sorting everything into categories. Clothes, school materials, and photography equipment were non-negotiable. Books, childhood mementos, and furniture would have to be stored or abandoned. Mrs. Jenkins at the cafe was another unexpected source of support when I explained why I needed more shifts. "They can't do that, honey. It's not legal," she said, outraged on my behalf. "Actually, there's no law saying your parents have to house you until 18 in Massachusetts." I explained, having researched this thoroughly. "They're still financially responsible for me, but that doesn't mean I have to live with them." She shook her head in disbelief. "Well, you can work as many hours as you want, as long as it doesn't affect your schoolwork. And if you need a place to stay, my sister has a guest room you could use until you figure things out." Ms. Thompson at school was equally supportive when I explained my situation, her expression growing increasingly troubled as I outlined my parents' decision. "Serenity, this could be considered constructive abandonment," she said. "There are resources available for situations like yours." She provided me with information about emergency housing for minors' legal emancipation and social services that might help. I tucked the pamphlets into my backpack, hoping I wouldn't need them, but grateful to have options. The last day in my childhood home arrived with brutal swiftness. I had arranged to stay with Jasmine's family temporarily, while I figured out a more permanent solution. My belongings were packed into 6 boxes and 3 suitcases, everything I could take with me. The rest was organized neatly in labeled containers that would stay in our basement storage area, with my grandmother promising to check that my parents didn't discard them. As I carried the last box downstairs, I passed the open door of what had been my room for 16 years. My mother was already inside with Amber discussing where the crib would go, and whether the walls should be painted mint green or soft yellow. Neither of them noticed me standing there watching as they literally erased my existence from the space. My father helped load my things into his car to drive me to Jasmine's house. The silence between us was deafening. As he pulled into the Patel's driveway, he finally spoke. "I know this isn't easy, but you've always been our strong one. Amber needs us right now in a way you never have." His words were meant as a compliment, but revealed the fundamental flaw in how they viewed me. Because I had adapted to their neglect by becoming self-sufficient, they used my resilience to justify further abandonment. "That's not how parenting is supposed to work, Dad," I said quietly. "You're supposed to be there for both your children, not just the one who demands more attention." He looked startled, as if the concept had never occurred to him. "We're not abandoning you, Serenity. We're just asking you to be adult about this situation." "I'm 16, I reminded him. "I shouldn't have to be adult about anything yet." He helped carry my boxes to the door, but declined Mrs. Patel's invitation to come inside. As he drove away, I realized he hadn't even said goodbye properly, as if acknowledging this was a significant parting would force him to confront what they were doing. The Patels had cleared a corner of Jasmine's room for me, setting up an air mattress and making space in her closet for my clothes. They were wonderfully kind, but I knew I couldn't stay long term. Their house was already full, and despite their generosity, I felt like an intrusion. That first night, lying on the air mattress in the dark with Jasmine sleeping a few feet away, the full reality of my situation crashed over me. I had been kicked out of my home to make room for my sister's baby. The family that should have protected me had decided I was dispensable. As tears silently soaked my pillow, I made myself a promise I would never again put my heart in the hands of people who saw me as optional. The following 3 months were a crash course in adult responsibilities that no 16-year-old should have to navigate. Living with Jasmine's family was a temporary solution that I was grateful for, but the strain was evident despite their kindness. Their house, already bustling with 4 children, simply wasn't designed to accommodate another teenager. Privacy was non-existent, and though no one complained, I was acutely aware of being an imposition. I increased my hours at the cafe to the maximum allowed for a student, saving every dollar. My school performance began to suffer slightly as exhaustion set in. For the first time in my life, I received a B on an important English paper. Ms. Thompson noticed immediately. "You're stretching yourself too thin," she said during one of our lunch meetings. "Have your parents provided any financial support since you moved out?" The truth was, they hadn't. My father had given me $200 the day he dropped me off at Jasmine's, saying it should tide me over. But nothing since then. I called home once a week, brief conversations where my mother would update me on Amber's pregnancy and nursery preparations without ever asking detailed questions about my well-being. During these months, I maintained a facade of coping well. I smiled at school, worked diligently at the cafe, and expressed nothing but gratitude to the Patels. But inside, a growing hollow was forming where my sense of security used to be. I slept poorly often, waking with anxiety knots in my stomach. I lost weight as my appetite diminished. Photography, once my passion, felt distant as my camera gathered dust in its case, my creative energy consumed by basic survival. The breaking point came one Sunday morning in February, 3 months after I'd been asked to leave. I was scrolling through my phone when I saw a series of photos posted by my mother showing Amber's baby shower. There was our living room decorated in pale blue. They'd learned the baby was a boy with a banner reading, "Welcome, Baby Noah." There were my parents beaming proudly beside Amber, who was opening gifts. The nursery, my former bedroom, was featured prominently, completely transformed with a crib-changing table and nautical-themed wallpaper. What struck me wasn't just the celebration itself, but the complete absence of any mention of me. In the corner of one photo, I spotted the family portrait that used to hang in our hallway, now edited to show just my parents and Amber. It was as if I had never existed. Something broke inside me that morning. Sitting on the air mattress in Jasmine's room, I began to sob uncontrollably. Jasmine was out with her family at their temple, so I was alone in the house, which only intensified my sense of abandonment. The tears came from somewhere deep, and primal tears I had been holding back for years, not just months. I cried for the little girl who had learned to be invisible, for the teenager who had been discarded, and for the future I now had to build entirely on my own. Hours later, exhausted from crying, I lay staring at Jasmine's ceiling fan, feeling hollowed out. What was wrong with me that my own parents could so easily erase me from their lives? What fundamental flaw did I possess that made me so unworthy of their love and protection? The ringing of my phone interrupted these dark thoughts. It was my grandmother, Martha. "I'm outside the Patel's house," she said without preamble. "Come out, we're going for a drive." Surprised and curious, I washed my face, trying to hide the evidence of my breakdown, and went outside. Martha sat in her old Buick, looking determined. At 72, she was still fiercely independent and sharp as ever. She took one look at my puffy eyes and set jaw. "Get in, we need to talk." We drove to a small park nearby and sat on a bench overlooking a frozen pond. Martha pulled out a large envelope from her purse and handed it to me. "I've been waiting for the right moment to give you these, and I think that moment is now," she said. Inside were old family photographs I had never seen before, along with yellowed letters and documents. One photo showed a young woman, perhaps 18, with a baby. "That's my mother, your great-grandmother Eleanor," Martha explained. "And that baby is me." She pointed to another photo of a larger family group where Eleanor stood slightly apart from the others. "This is the family that raised her, but look at how they're positioned. Do you see the similarity to those family photos you've taken?" I nodded, recognizing the same subtle distancing I had documented in our own family dynamics. Eleanor was the second daughter in her family. When her older sister got married and announced a pregnancy, their parents decided Eleanor should move out to give the new family more space in their small house. She was 18, barely finished with high school. Sound familiar? The parallel was startling. What happened to her? She struggled, worked multiple jobs, eventually met my father and married him. But the abandonment marked her. She was always insecure, always seeking approval she never received. She maintained a relationship with her parents and sister, but there was always this wound between them that never fully healed. Martha took my hand. I watched how it affected her whole life, how she could never quite believe she was worthy of love. When I saw your mother starting the same pattern with you and Amber, I promised myself history wouldn't repeat itself again. She pulled out another document from the envelope. It was a bank statement for a trust fund in my name containing just over $30,000. I started saving for you when you were 10, and I first noticed how they treated you differently. I've been adding to it every month since then. It was going to be for college, but I think you need to know about it now. You're named as the beneficiary, and it converts to your full control when you turn 18. But I can release funds for educational and living expenses now as the trustee. I stared at the paper, unable to process what I was seeing. Grandma, I don't understand. This is so much money. It's your safety net, Serenity. And more importantly, it's proof that someone has always seen your worth even when your parents failed to. Martha then revealed she had been speaking with a lawyer friend who specialized in family law. There's something called emancipation that might help your situation. It would legally recognize you as independent before you turn 18, which would give you more control over your life and this money. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of hope. Martha's revelation wasn't just financial security, it was validation that I wasn't crazy or too demanding. The pattern I had experienced had historical precedent, which somehow made it less about my personal value and more about flawed family systems. The next day, Martha arranged a meeting with Ms. Thompson and her lawyer friend Patricia Winters. Together, they explained the emancipation process and what it would mean for me. You would essentially become your own legal guardian, Patricia explained. You could sign a lease, make medical decisions, and have full access to any money in your name. But it also means taking on adult responsibilities completely. Your parents would still be financially obligated to provide support, Ms. Thompson added. But given their current position, we might need to pursue that legally. And we discussed practical considerations: where I would live, how I would continue my education, and what support systems I could rely on. Patricia mentioned a client who owned a small apartment building with a studio unit that might be affordable with my savings and part-time job. The judge will want to see that you have a stable living situation and can support yourself, she explained. Having the trust fund helps significantly, but you'll also need to demonstrate maturity and planning. As we mapped out the steps forward, I felt something shifting inside me. The hurt remained, but alongside it grew a sense of determination. My parents had made their choice, prioritizing Amber and her baby over me. Now, I would make my choice, prioritizing my own well-being and future. That evening, sitting in Jasmine's basement with my camera in hand, for the first time in months, I began taking self-portraits. Not the sad, shadow-filled images of my earlier project, but photographs that captured something new in my expression: resilience, determination, and the first fragile shoots of self-acceptance. If my family couldn't see my worth, I would have to learn to see it for myself. That night, I slept through till morning for the first time since leaving home. The legal process of emancipation was complex, but moved forward with surprising efficiency, thanks to Patricia's expertise and my grandmother's determination. We gathered documentation of my academic record, employment history, and financial situation, including the trust fund Martha had established. Patricia helped me create a detailed budget, showing how I could support myself through a combination of my cafe job, occasional photography gigs, and careful use of the trust fund for essentials. The apartment Patricia had mentioned became a real possibility. It was a tiny studio above a bookstore in a safe neighborhood, nothing fancy but clean and affordable on my budget. The owner, Mr. Abernathy, was initially hesitant to rent to a minor, but agreed after meeting with Patricia and reviewing my emancipation paperwork. "You remind me of my granddaughter," he told me during the viewing. "Same serious eyes. I'll hold the unit for you until your court date." My parents were shocked when they received the legal papers. My father called immediately, his voice a mixture of anger and confusion. "What is the meaning of this Serenity emancipation? Are you trying to punish us?" "I'm trying to secure my future dad," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You asked me to be adult about the situation. This is me doing exactly that." "We never intended for you to take such a drastic step," my mother chimed in, apparently on speakerphone. We thought you would stay with friends temporarily and then come home after the baby was settled." Her rewriting of history was breathtaking. At no point had they suggested my banishment was temporary. In fact, they had been converting my room into a permanent nursery, removing all traces of my existence. "When exactly was I supposed to come home, Mom? After you painted over my walls, after you gave away my furniture, after you edited me out of the family photos." The silence that followed told me they hadn't realized I'd seen the doctored family portrait from the baby shower. "That was just for the baby shower theme," my mother finally said weakly. "We needed pictures that matched the blue color scheme." The absurdity of her excuse might have made me laugh if it hadn't been so painful. "I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing it because I need stability and security, and you've made it clear I won't find that with you." After that conversation, my parents took a new approach. To friends and family, they began describing my move and emancipation petition as my choice, a sign of my independence and ambition. Serenity is so mature, she wanted to try living on her own before college. I overheard my mother telling a neighbor when I went to collect more of my belongings. My father nodded along, adding, "She's always been our independent one." Their revisionist narrative was frustrating, but ultimately irrelevant to my legal process. The court appointed a guardian ad litem to investigate my case and make recommendations to the judge. After interviewing me, my parents, Martha the Patels, and reviewing all the documentation, she supported my petition for emancipation. "The minor demonstrates exceptional maturity and has established clear means of self-support," her report concluded. "The parents' decision to remove her from the family home has effectively forced her into independence, already making legal recognition of this status appropriate." The court hearing itself was brief but significant. The judge, an older woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the guardian's report and asked me several direct questions about my plans, finances, and education. My parents attended, but said little, seeming uncomfortable under the judge's occasionally disapproving glance. "Based on the evidence presented and the recommendations of the guardian ad litem, I find that emancipation is in the minor's best interest," the judge announced. "Serenity Henderson is hereby emancipated and granted the legal rights of adulthood with all applicable responsibilities thereof." With the stroke of a pen at 16 and a half years old, I became legally independent. The mixture of emotions was overwhelming relief, anxiety, grief, and a strange exhilaration. As I left the courthouse with Martha and Patricia legal papers in hand, I felt the weight of childhood falling away, replaced by something both heavier and more empowering. The transition to my studio apartment was the next challenge. Mr. Abernathy helped me move in, even assembling a small desk he had found in storage, but which I suspected he purchased specifically for me. The space was minimal, a main room that served as bedroom and living area, a tiny kitchenette, and a compact bathroom. But it was mine, secure and private, in a way I hadn't experienced before. Martha and Jasmine helped me decorate with affordable finds from thrift stores and discount shops. Ms. Thompson arranged for me to receive academic counseling to ensure I stayed on track for college, despite my unusual living situation. Mrs. Jenkins adjusted my cafe schedule to give me more weekend hours while protecting my study time. My high school graduation that spring was a bittersweet milestone. I graduated with honors, despite everything my academic performance having recovered once my living situation stabilized. My parents attended the ceremony, sitting awkwardly beside Martha. Amber came too visibly pregnant and due within weeks. We posed for an uncomfortable family photo afterward, the tension evident despite our smiles. "We're proud of you," my father said stiffly as we parted. I nodded, accepting the words without fully believing them. Their pride had always been conditional based on how well I performed, without causing trouble, rather than unconditional love for who I was. The real celebration came later at a small restaurant where Martha had arranged a dinner with the people who had truly supported me, Jasmine and her parents, Ms. Thompson, Mrs. Jenkins, Patricia, and Mr. Abernathy. These people none related to me by blood, except Martha had become my chosen family, providing the acceptance and encouragement my parents had withheld. When college acceptance letters arrived, I had multiple options with scholarship offers thanks to my academic record and the compelling personal essay I had written about resilience and independence. I chose a photography program at an arts college in California, as far from Boston as I could manage while staying in the continental U.S. The day I left for college, Martha drove me to the airport. No one else from my biological family came to say goodbye, though Amber had texted a brief good luck message. As Martha hugged me at the security checkpoint, she pressed a small box into my hand. "Open it when you're on the plane," she instructed, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Remember, your worth has never been determined by their ability to see it." Once airborne, I opened the package to find a beautiful vintage compass on a silver chain. The note inside read, "So you always find your true north no matter where life takes you." It was the perfect symbol for this new chapter, a reminder that even when lost, I could find my way forward. Landing in California felt like stepping onto another planet. The light was different, the air warmer and drier than Boston's humidity. My dorm room, shared with a music major named Zoe, was roughly the same size as my studio apartment had been, but it represented something profoundly different, a future I had chosen, rather than one forced upon me by others' decisions. That first year of college was transformative in ways I hadn't anticipated. Free from the shadow of family dynamics, I discovered parts of myself that had been suppressed for years. My photography evolved, developing a distinctive style that professors praised for its emotional depth and unique perspective. I made friends who knew nothing of my past and accepted me simply for who I was in the present. The distance also gave me clarity about my family. I wasn't just the responsible, invisible child anymore. I was Serenity photographer friend student with an identity entirely separate from the role I had been assigned in my parents' narrative. 4 years have passed since that plane ride to California. I'm 22 now, in my final year of college and preparing for graduation with honors in fine art photography. My life bears little resemblance to what it was before, transformed by both circumstance and choice. My work has gained recognition in the art community, with my series Invisible Presence being featured in several galleries. The collection examines family dynamics and emotional absence through carefully composed images that reveal the negative spaces in relationships. Critics have called it hauntingly perceptive and a masterclass in visual storytelling of emotional truths. My relationship with my biological family remains complicated. After Noah was born, Amber's relationship with Tyler deteriorated rapidly. He wasn't ready for parenthood, and within a year they had separated. Amber found herself living at home with my parents, attempting to finish her online courses while raising a baby. The idyllic family unit they had envisioned, the one they had sacrificed me for, never materialized as they had hoped. About a year after I left, my mother began reaching out more consistently, sending brief emails that gradually acknowledged the harm they had caused. "I don't expect you to forgive us," she wrote in one message, "but I want you to know I think about you every day and regret how we handled things." My father was slower to recognize the damage, but eventually he too began to write occasionally. His emails were more practical, asking about my studies and offering financial assistance that I politely declined. The trust fund Martha had established, combined with scholarships and my part-time work, had given me the freedom to decline their belated support. I established boundaries around our communication. I would respond to emails but rarely initiated contact. I visited Boston only once a year, usually around Christmas, staying with Martha rather than at my parents' house. During these visits, I would see my parents and Amber for short, defined periods, never allowing myself to be pulled back into their emotional undertow. My relationship with Amber evolved in unexpected ways. After experiencing the realities of parenthood and the limitations of our parents' support, she developed a new perspective. "I never realized how hard it must have been for you," she admitted during one of my visits home. "They help with Noah, but there are so many conditions and judgments. I'm starting to understand what you went through." Noah. My nephew is a bright, curious 5-year-old who knows me as Auntie Serenity who takes pictures. I've made an effort to be present in his life despite the distance, sending him custom photo books of California wildlife and landscapes. When I visit, we go on photo safaris around the neighborhood, his small hand clutching a toy camera I bought him. These moments are precious precisely because they're limited and on my terms. Martha remains my rock, my true north. At 76, she's still vibrant and sharp, though she's moved to a smaller apartment that's easier to maintain. We talk weekly, and she's flown to California twice to visit me, proudly attending my first gallery showing. "I always knew you were special," she told me that night, surveying my work with tears in her eyes. "Now everyone else can see it too." Healing hasn't been a straight line. I've spent countless hours in therapy working through the abandonment issues and insecurities that stemmed from my family's treatment. I've had moments of backsliding, times when criticism from a professor or rejection from a gallery would trigger those old feelings of being unworthy and disposable. but I've also built a life rich with chosen connections. My roommate from freshman year, Zoe, remains one of my closest friends. I've learned about healthy relationships, and developed a community of artists and friends who value me for exactly who I am. Mrs. Jenkins still sends me care packages of specialty coffees, and Mr. Abernathy emails me articles about photography he finds interesting. Ms. Thompson and I exchange holiday cards, hers always including a note about how proud she is of my journey. 3 months ago, I experienced what felt like the culmination of my professional and personal growth when my work was featured in a major gallery in San Francisco. The exhibition centered on themes of resilience and reclamation, featuring photographs that transformed painful experiences into powerful art. Martha flew out for the opening, as did Jasmine, who is now completing her medical residency. My parents asked if they could attend. After much consideration, I agreed, setting clear expectations about the visit. They seemed genuinely awed by the exhibition and the recognition my work had received. As they stood before a particularly poignant image, a self-portrait silhouetted against an empty doorway, I saw my mother wipe away tears. Later that evening at dinner, they attempted something like a formal apology. "We failed you, Serenity," my father said, his voice uncharacteristically emotional. "There's no excuse for what we did. Seeing your work, understanding even a fraction of what you felt. We were wrong." My mother nodded, adding, "I know we can't undo the past, but we're so proud of the woman you've become despite our mistakes." Their words were sincere, but came 6 years too late. I acknowledged their apology without offering complete absolution. Forgiveness, I've learned, doesn't require forgetting or removing boundaries. It simply means releasing the expectation that the past could have been different. "I've built a good life," I told them. "I'm grateful for the lessons, even the painful ones. They shaped my art and my understanding of what family should be. The relationship we've established now is cordial but limited. I don't depend on them emotionally or otherwise, which ironically has allowed for more honest interactions than we ever had when I lived under their roof. My work with youth organizations has become another source of healing. I volunteer with a program for teens experiencing family disruption, teaching photography as a means of expression and processing. Seeing these young people find their voice through art brings my journey full circle. The greatest lesson I've learned is that family isn't defined by biology, but by consistent love and support. The people who stand by you when you're at your most vulnerable, who see your worth when you can't see it yourself, who make room for you instead of pushing you aside, those are your true family, regardless of shared DNA. Looking ahead to graduation and beyond, I feel a sense of possibility that would have seemed impossible that night. I lay crying on an air mattress in Jasmine's room. The path hasn't been easy, but it has been mine to forge. In being forced to leave home, I paradoxically found my way home to myself. I won't pretend the scars have disappeared entirely. On certain quiet nights, the memory of being disposable still whispers in my ear. But now I have the strength to whisper back, "That was their failure, not mine." Have you ever had to rebuild your sense of home or family? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If my journey resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more stories of resilience and healing. And remember, sometimes the family we create matters more than the one we're born into. Thank you for listening, and I hope you find your true north, whatever challenges you face.